Welcome to Heart to Heart with Nicole and David, featuring your hosts, Nicole Vickery and David Franco. Our program is designed to empower the adult congenital heart defect community with information of importance to the growing population of heart warriors. Nicole and David, both heart warriors, will be meeting with people from around the world to share information, gain knowledge, and draw hope from their experiences. And now, here are Nicole and David.
Welcome to the fourth episode of Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. I am Carol Raimondi, and I'm filling in today for Nicole Vickery. I am a transposition of the Great Vessel's Heart Warrior, and I'm sharing the studio today with another guest host, Nauman Shahid, who is a Heart Warrior. Nauman is filling in for David today.
Hi, Carol, and welcome to our show. Today's episode is called Rocking Our Scars, where we will discuss what it's like to be a heart warrior and how we deal with our scars. The theme this season is You Are Not Alone, because as heart warriors, we know what it feels like to be alone. Today we're going to talk about something we all have in common, the fact that we have scars, badges of honor, that were necessary in order for us to survive.
Our guests today are Amy Erb and Alex Jaworski.
Alex Jaworski was born on August 11th, 1994, and was initially diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Although he had an unusual assortment of heart defects, which included transposition of the great arteries, double inlet left ventricle, and hypoplastic left ventricle, he had his first two open heart surgeries, a modified Blalock Tessic shunt and a fenestrated Fontan procedure before his first birthday, and then went on 16 years without needing surgery. By the time Alex was 17, he had developed an aortic aneurysm, which had been growing in size for several years. His last open heart surgery, a Fontan conversion aortic aneurysm surgery, and modified MACE procedure, had the longest hospital stay of the three surgeries he'd had. Being operated on again at the age of 17 helped Alex to appreciate his scars in a whole new way. Welcome to Heart with Nicole and David, Alex.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Can you please tell us a little bit about your scars?
Of course. I have 5 scars. The most obvious one goes right down the middle of my chest. And I was lucky there because Dr. Calhoun cut straight down the original scar during my last surgery. So it still looks like just one scar even though he's cut me open 3 times now. Very good at that. I also have 4 other little ones. They're all around the bottom of my rib cage. They were left over from the breathing machine and the chest tubes that I had on recovery. Most of them they're all faded white. All of the little scars they look that way now. You can barely see them. And then the large one is bright red. Well, it was bright red originally. It's still pinkish in one area, but for the most part, it's also faded.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of scars. Fantastic for being a warrior. Now I'm curious. Have you always rocked your scar, Alex?
No, for a long time growing up, I distanced myself from my scars and my heart defect. And a couple years after my most recent surgery in 2011, I was still recovering and I didn't like talking about it. It's only in the last few years I've really been able to discuss and to share with anyone about my scars and my heart and all. So I wouldn't say I really rocked it. I wasn't really embarrassed as such by it, but it wasn't something that I put any effort towards talking about.
Right, understand. Now, Alex, have you ever told a story about one or more of your scars you mentioned? If so, what's your best story?
I'm not a good liar. So I did once say that I got my scars in a knife fight, and they were like all shocked about that. And I just laughed and said, no, I'm joking. I just had surgery and I was little. And they were like, oh, okay. But I mean, I feel like that was a good way to handle it because then they didn't really push many questions about surgery, and that's fine with me. It was just at a time when I didn't want to talk about it. So I made a bit of a joke about it, and they seemed to understand.
You know, I'm in medical school right now, and they say laughter is the best medicine. You're absolutely right. When you joke about these things, it tends to take off the pressure off of you. So I definitely can relate to that. I myself have a big scar on my sternum, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Very nice. So I just want to thank you for sharing that with us. So right now, we need to take a short break, but when we come back, Carol will talk with Amy about their scars, so we'll be right back.
The most common theme that I hear is why.
She always needed
a lot of attention. She had strokes.
Even though it's a natural inclination to withdraw from the CHD community, I think being a part of it helped me be part of the solution.
Heart to Heart with Michael. Please join us every Thursday at noon Eastern. I'm Michael Lieben, and I'll be your host as we talk with people from around the world who have experienced those most difficult moments.
Home Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective.
I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
You are listening to Heart with Nicole and David. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Nicole or David at hearttoheartwithnicoleanddavid.com. Now, back to Heart with Nicole and David.
Welcome back to Heart with Nicole and David. The guys were just talking about rocking their scars, but now let's talk with Amy. Amy Erb is a 34-year-old from North Carolina, born with transposition of the great vessels, a ventricular septal defect, and left ventricular outflow tract obstruction. She has undergone 4 open heart surgeries, first at less than 1 day old and last at 15 years, including a conduit and valve replacements and the Rastelli procedure. In between surgeries, at age 9, Amy was diagnosed with subacute bacterial endocarditis and was in the hospital for 19 days. She has had countless heart catheterizations, recently had 2 ablations, and continues to suffer from persistent atrial flutter. Amy is married to her wonderful husband, Jeremy, and is a mom to a heart-healthy 6-year-old boy named Eli. She is an elementary school teacher in Union County, North Carolina, and hopes to become an assistant principal soon. Her family has always been amazingly supportive, and without them, she would not be here today. Welcome to Heart with Nicole and David, Amy.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Amy, tell me, when you're dressing up, do you tend to hide your scar?
When I was younger, I would definitely say yes. It was one of those things growing up. I didn't really want to talk about it. I would always make up stories about how I got my scar just to kind of get the eyes and the questions away from it, to kind of put a little laughter into the situation. But now that I'm older, I think I've embraced it much better than I used to. And when I dress up now, I don't hide it at all. I'm proud to rock it. And, if it weren't for having those scars, I wouldn't be here today.
Exactly. I feel the same way. I think, especially going through like those teenage years, you tend to want to hide it a little bit more. I know I did at that point too.
As much as possible.
Exactly. And now it's, you're just proud to show them off.
When I picked up my wedding dress, I was sure to pick a dress that showed it off and, show my mom and dad and my sister that I was proud of it and didn't want to hide anything.
Right. I think actually I did have some makeup kind of covering it a little bit because my wedding was about 6 months after my last open heart surgery. So my scar was really red at that point still. And I had several infections in that scar. So it wasn't, how it is now where it's a lot lighter and, whiter. Right. So I definitely, at that occasion, I did want to have it covered up just a little bit because it wasn't looking how it normally would look.
Oh, in high school, I definitely used to put makeup on it all the time. And, girls in high school can be awfully mean. And
yes,
I would try to cover it up as much as possible then.
Right. Are there times still now, though, that you feel like showing off your scar, but you don't always want people thinking about the fact that you're a heart warrior?
Being a teacher, it's kind of led to interesting discussions with my students and my students' parents. I teach elementary school, so they're pretty observant about things that you would never think that they'd be observing. But they would, definitely look at it and ask me where I got the scar, how I got the scar. And they don't really necessarily think of me as a heart warrior like I would, per se. But I'm proud to talk about it and kind of proud to give my students a little lesson on basic anatomy and what happened and why I was born this way. And they just kind of learn a little bit without being too nosy about it.
Right. I know sometimes I have some older people come up to me sometimes and say, "Oh, you had bypass just like me," and they'll show me their scar. And it's like, well, I didn't necessarily have bypass, but we did have the same scar. How about our favorite topic, bathing suits? Do you tend to get one-piece or two-piece due to your scar, especially since a lot of us have multiple scars on our chests and bodies?
Right. Well, my scarf goes straight down my sternum and extends to about 2 to 3 inches above my navel. So it's pretty long. I've got quite a few chest tube scars mixed in there. And so in high school, if I was around my close friends, I wouldn't mind wearing a two-piece. But now that I'm a little older and, I've had a child and, the scars kind of fade a little bit. So scar-wise, I don't mind showing it off, but I think it's just more comfortable to be in a one-piece right now.
Yeah, I think I like doing those either like a one-piece or those like the tankinis where everything is still covered, but it's still a two-piece.
So it still looks somewhat fashionable.
Yeah, I try. But yeah, definitely, I think it's not so much about hiding my scars as it is, just changes after age and having kids and things like that.
Exactly.
Well, it is time for a short break. Please stay with us, though, as we'll be right back, and all of us will be in the studio together. When we come back, we'll find out a little bit more about our guests and how they rock their scars.
Did you know that most men suffer from beard itch, ingrown hairs, and a dry face, all because they're not using the right shaving tools? At woodrazor.com, we sell handmade heirloom quality badger hair brushes that exfoliate the skin, open the pores, and stimulate hair follicles, which gives a gentleman a closer, more comfortable shave and a clean face. Visit our website, woodrazor.com, where you can learn more about men's skincare and check out our professional shaving tools. A perfect gift for your man, built to last for generations. That's woodrazor.com.
You're really sharing a very valuable gift with so many people throughout the country and internationally.
To create a framework for the long-term follow-up of children and young adults.
I am Anna Jaworski and the host of Heart to Heart with Anna. Join us on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time on Spreaker or Blog Talk Radio. We'll cover topics of importance for the congenital heart defect community. Remember, my friends, you are not alone.
You are listening to Heart with Nicole and David. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on our program, please send an email to Nicole at hearttoheartwithnicoleanddavid.com. Now, back to Heart with Nicole and David.
Welcome back to Heart with Nicole and David. We have had a wonderful time talking with our guests. So, Amy, we're going to put the spotlight back on you for a bit. Question for you. Have you had to explain about your scar to your son? And if so, what have you told him?
I have had to explain it. He loves to cuddle, and when he sits on my lap, he'll occasionally hit my scar in the wrong way, and it kind of makes you cringe or jump a little bit. Just, even all these years later, it's still very sensitive to feeling. So the first time it happened, he asked what was wrong, and I had to point out to him that Mommy has a scar right there, and it was because of the heart surgery that I'd had when I was younger, and even though it's been a while, it still makes me jump a little bit, so to be careful around it. But now, it's his normal, so he doesn't really pick up on differences, with older ladies at this point, I guess, in his life, but he doesn't really know any differently. It's just kind of what he's always been around.
So I guess it sort of, normalized his stimulation to that, it seems like.
Exactly.
Stuff, so very good. It's quite brave of you to how you do it and stuff, because I don't have kids of my own yet. Maybe one day I will, and with my surgery coming up shortly, my second open heart, my scars will be much more fresh being 30 years old. So this is good preparation for me of how I'm going to be explaining to my kids and stuff. So it's good to know. Great. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So Alex, can you tell me, has your scar ever come up while you were working at the hospital? And how did you handle that if it did?
Yeah, it's come up a few times. I normally don't wear a shirt under my scrubs. And so the style that I wear leaves the top few inches of my scar, the long one, are visible. So people do see it, and it's pale, that part of the scar, but still people notice it. And one of the nurses is really nice. She always kind of does a little checkup on me to make sure I'm doing fine. A while ago, there was a student nurse, and I saw him practicing with a stethoscope, so I told him, here, check out mine. And he saw his scar, he was like, oh, you've had something happen, didn't you? And I told him what my doctor's always described to his students, but he listened and he was surprised because I have almost constant, or at least very frequent arrhythmias. So my doctor's always described a little extra beat thrown in there. And so I let the guy listen to that. And it actually feels a lot easier at work because these are people in the medical field on a daily basis. They're used to scars and health issues like that. So it's actually kind of fun to share with them a bit. Some of them have had some very interesting things to say about it.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I had worked in the hospital for quite a while too, and I had similar experiences as you did, some good and some negative, unfortunately. But for the most part, it was a lot of the similar things like you were saying, where a lot of people would ask what the scar was from, what type of surgery I had. A lot of people interested in listening to my heart sounds, things like that. Unfortunately, one of the negative things that had happened was very early on, was that when I was working at the hospital, and this is probably 25 years ago now. The boss that I had at the time, I was wearing the same thing like you did. I was wearing scrubs, and it was right after I had come back from having multiple surgeries, infections, things like that. So my scar was still pretty red. And I actually had my boss tell me to put a shirt underneath my scrubs and wear a turtleneck and cover it up because she didn't want me offending patients. And being in a hospital setting, I was so taken aback by that because I thought, this should be something that people understand here. What if I had a scar on my face or somewhere that I couldn't hide it with a shirt? But aside from that, I've always had positive experiences, but that one definitely, no pun intended, left a mark. So yeah, it's definitely, you get a lot of people when you're in the hospital, that can recognize it right away and are usually excited to hear your story.
Yes, I agree. It's very nice to hear people who are really wanting to just hear what you've been through. And I always try, like you're saying, you think it's a place where the patients would want to know there's someone working there who's been through it. Sometimes when I'm on the stairs, I'll see patients going through just basic physical therapy, just walking up or down the stairs, which I had to do after my last surgery. So I always make a point of telling them, hey, I've been through there, you're doing really good. And they always seem pleased when I say that to them. So I can see where, you would think it's almost a good thing to be working in a hospital after having been through surgery like that.
Right, absolutely. A lot of people have that compassion because they know what you've been through, and you have more compassion as a healthcare provider because you can understand what those patients are going through and, tell them that you've been there. Exactly. I think it's definitely something.
Yeah. I'm going to step in here for a second. So, me being a medical student, so part of our curriculum is to do clinical skills and whatnot. So we have to take off our shirts in the classroom and lab at times. And I remember the first day of class, the first day of lab, we took our shirts off. And right away, I stood out for the whole class, obviously. And everyone sort of jumped in and asked me, what's that? You have a huge scar, So I told them I had open heart surgery, I have tetralogy fellow and stuff. So, it's a good conversation icebreaker with students. But you're absolutely right, both of you. When you're in that arena of medical care, having someone who truly wants to know what it is, a disease progression, it makes a world of a difference, makes you feel better about your scars then. So I definitely agree with both of you on that.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to Amy. And Amy, question for you. In terms of your scar, have you noticed it changed over the years? Is it less noticeable now or more so?
It's definitely a lot less noticeable now than, right after my latest surgery. As a kid, I wasn't really aware of it until probably about 3rd or 4th grade. And I had a surgery in 1st grade and then again in 10th grade. And in 10th grade, it was just, I tried to cover it up. Didn't want anybody to really know about it or ask about it. And then in college, I kind of got up the mindset, well, I'm pretty lucky to be alive and to be here, and I better rock this thing and embrace it because it's not going anywhere. But over the years, it's definitely faded. I'm fanatical about putting sunscreen on it when I'm at the beach and make sure to, lather myself up and sit under an umbrella so it doesn't get worse. And, I just kind of keep wanting it to not fade away into nothing because it'll always be there. But I guess if it's fading away, then it's just a good reminder that I am a heart warrior and I'm going to be the best that I can be, and this is not going to get the best of me.
The best you can be, yeah, absolutely. That's what I tell myself every day, in and out. I remember when I was growing up, too, just like you, 10th grade, 11th grade came in. I was a bit insecure about my own scar. And then growing up and going to college, meeting friends and stuff. When summer came around, I used to dread it, Memorial Day, because that meant to take off my shirt, going to the pool, and people asking questions. But now, being in this profession and a future physician, I've sort of embraced my scar like a heart warrior, just like anyone else for that matter. And I see myself at an advantage now, because I want to go into cardiology one day, and I see myself as a heart warrior who's willing to give off my experience as a learning utensil for others. So definitely, learning to embrace your scars is the way to go and the way to be. So definitely, that's good to have.
And I love that you say, you want to go into cardiology. I think that's fantastic, because I think it's hard sometimes as, adult congenital heart patients to relate to the physicians that are treating us. They can't walk in our shoes. They don't know what we've been through. And it would be nice to one day have a doctor who has kind of been through the same path that we've all been down to.
You're absolutely right. I remember very recently when I was looking for congenital heart surgeon for my own pulmonic valve exchange coming up. It was very difficult for me to find someone. And before this whole episode that I recently had, I wanted to go into emergency medicine because I was an EMT for 3 years. And this whole episode, by virtue of chance, I've been influenced into going to this field of cardiology now, I feel, and specifically adult congenital cardiology, because there is a really big need for it. I'm always on Facebook groups and talking to parents, and there's a big need for it. There are not enough adult congenital heart specialists out there. And congenital heart disease is a lifelong thing. You have to have follow-ups every year. You can have those healthcare gaps falling between. That's when disease progression takes place, and sometimes there are dire circumstances. So, having to go in this field, I feel I'm definitely going to be at an advantage, definitely.
You definitely will be, Nauman. I have to say, I went into cardiology, but it was mostly adult-acquired disease that I took care of as far as my patient population. And even though our disease structures and things like that weren't the same, having to be able to explain to them procedures that I've gone through that they were going through, whether it was a cath or an angiogram or an echo, stress test, just being able to tell them from your own perspective, you'll find that your patients are really going to appreciate that. And we absolutely need more adult congenital cardiologists. There's definitely a huge need for that, so that's wonderful. I wanted to ask Alex, too. Have you had any issues with any of the healing of your scars, such as pain or like a keloid scar, which are scars that are raised or thick, or any other abnormalities?
Not really. After my last surgery, which was about 5 years ago now, I was, like, every part of me was in pain at one time or another, so it never really stood out if my scars were a more painful spot. Part of my large scar running down my chest, near the bottom, there's a little bulge of scar tissue. And that's also the spot where I mentioned it's still a little pinkish around there, even though the rest of it is faded. But other than that, they're all pretty flat and ordinary,
That's good to hear. I know I've had issues, I think, more with the scar tissue because I've had so many different surgeries. I've had 4 heart surgeries and a couple of revisions due to infections in the sternal bone and pacemaker surgeries, as well as multiple chest tubes. I really have a lot of issues now, I find, with scar tissue. I have one scar that is a little bit of a keloid, but it doesn't really bother me as much. Again, more so it's that scar tissue. I don't know if Nauman or Amy, have you guys had issues with that at all?
I'll let Amy go first.
As far as the scar tissue, I think that over the years, in some places it's gotten worse, and in some places it's definitely gotten better. But it's one of those things that, there's really not much you can do for it. So you kind of just have to embrace it and either, make the effort to show it off or to hide it. And I think it's good to rock it and show it off and explain to people when they ask and be able to tell them what you've been through.
As for me, for scar tissue, well, I've been fortunate enough to have only one open heart surgery so far. I'm 30 years old. I had my first one at 10 months old. So I've been open heart surgery free for about 30 years, nearly 29 years. I'm due for a second one coming up, second open heart surgery. So there is a conversation I had with my surgeon, scar tissue. And obviously it comes with the territory. That's what I've been told. So like everyone has said, to embrace it, to go with it, and, heck, make it a good icebreaker is what I say.
Absolutely. Although I have to say, I've seen a few people over the years in different chats and groups that I'm in that have actually tattooed over their scar a big old zipper, and I thought, oh, I don't know if I could handle having a tattoo on my scar. That would seem like a mighty sensitive area, but hey, they're definitely rocking their scars.
I think that would be so painful to have a tattoo over the scar. It's so sensitive to touch anyway. I can't imagine having that needle go in and out.
Exactly.
Very brave of them, though.
Yeah, definitely not my cup of tea. Would not be able to do that. I'm a pretty tough guy, but that'll challenge my cognition to do it. So no, definitely not me either.
An issue with getting a tattoo, but I can't see myself doing it right over the scar like that. It would be, I don't know about painful, but just kind of awkward. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I've seen some that are pretty intricate, and I just thought, I've never had a tattoo myself, but I thought, oh, like you said, Amy, that skin gets so sensitive, and just even having it touched in the wrong way can catch you off guard. Thought of voluntarily sticking needles into my chest just doesn't float my boat.
Yeah, not at all.
Absolutely.
We're near the end of our program today, but before we let everyone go, I have a final question for everyone. What is the most positive thing that you've been told about your scar? And this is for everyone, so we can all take turns and answer this, including myself.
All right, I'll go first. Probably the best, like, off-the-cuff comment that I've had on it was actually when I was, I guess, around 12 or so. I was on the local swim team, and I wore a full bodysuit in the pool because it was really cold, and I couldn't handle it back then. I turned blue way too quickly. So I wore the full bodysuit so the other kids on the swim team didn't see my scar. And then it happened one day that I was in the locker room changing, and one of the other kids was there, and he asked about my scar. So I explained to him that I'd had surgery, and he goes, "Oh man, that's awesome, you're a survivor." And that was like the best, just off-the-cuff thing I could have heard at the time. And it's still one of the best things I've heard since. Even now when people be like interested in talking about it health-wise and all of that, it's still just a very, very, very positive because it was so unexpected back then that he said that. So that was my best experience.
Okay, I'll go now. When I was in high school, I got my driver's license and was the resident chauffeur for my friends. And every morning I'd go to my best friend's house to pick her up first. And every morning I would ask her to borrow her concealer so I could cover up my scar. It was, the year right after I had had it, so it was still pretty fresh and red. And one day I think she just got tired of me asking for it, or made a comment of, why don't you go get your own concealer? I said, I don't want people to ask about it. I'm embarrassed by it. And she looked at me and she said, "Amy, you're just lucky to be alive. You need to be proud of that." And, her words still stick with me today. And I kind of think from that point on, I stopped trying to cover it up, and I made it more a part of who I am and was proud to talk about it from that point forward.
That's awesome. Do you want me to go next?
Yes, please.
Okay. For me, I feel like I've always been told that my scars are a roadmap of where I've been and everything that I've been through. And if I didn't have these scars, that I wouldn't be able to be here today and helping others.
All these words are very true. We are very much a strong group of individuals. We're very unique. And for me personally, I've been told different things over the years and stuff, but very recently, having to deal with different things that happened in my life personally, from taking medical leave to being told open heart surgery and other things going on and off. One of the doctors I was seeing, I was talking about scar tissue and scar, and he said, you're going to have physical scars, mental scars from different things that happen in life. But a scar is really, what it means is that you were stronger than whatever tried to hurt you. Okay? And that really hit me hard because, over the course of our lives, we've had multiple open heart surgeries, multiple procedures and stuff, and we're going to have multiple scars. A scar is merely a tattoo of some sort that you should wear proudly, that whatever tried to hurt you, it couldn't get to you. Scars simply, it means that, you are stronger than whatever tried to hurt you. And if we can get that into our heads and go forward with it, nothing can break us. And that's the clear-cut message here. We're a unique group of individuals. We're heart warriors at the end of the day, and nothing can break us.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Nauman.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, I want to give the final thanks to our guests, Amy and Alex. We really appreciate your time today. Also, co-host Carol, I really appreciate your time. And I think we've learned a lot about each other, about congenital heart defects and everything in between. And I think our audience is definitely going to appreciate our conversation.
Thank you for having me on here today.
Thanks so much for having me on. I truly enjoyed talking to you guys.
Well, that concludes this episode of Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. Thanks for listening today. Until then, please contact David or Nicole or our producer, Anna Jaworski, if you'd like to be on the show.
And remember, until the date our heart defects can be cured, we are heart warriors. Let's keep up the good fight, and thank you all for listening.
Heart to Heart with Nicole and David is a production of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenital-heart-defects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more. Thank you again for joining us. We hope you have gained strength from listening to our program. Heart to Heart with Nicole and David can be heard every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time. We'll talk again next time when we'll share more stories. But if you'd like to continue today's discussion, please join us right after the program in the Hug Podcast chat room on Pal Talk.